Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. So please subscribe when you're finished listening. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Today's movie is The Shop Around the Corner, 1940. This movie has a very respectable 8.1 on imdb.com. Rotten Tomatoes has it as 100% on the tomato meter and 91% audience approval. So, not too shabby. Tomatoes continues with the quote, deftly directed by Ernst Lubitsch from a smart, funny script by Samson Raphaelson, The Shop Around the Corner is a romantic comedy in the finest sense of the term. This tale may seem a little familiar to you, and I will talk about it in the conclusion. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
James, or Jimmy Stewart, played Alfred Kralik. Jimmy was first covered in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. Sarah Hayden had a small role as Clerk Flora. Hayden was first covered in Laura, 1944. Margaret Sullivan played the role of young sales clerk, Clara Novak. Sullivan was born in Virginia in 1909. Her family was very wealthy and she attended private school. While attending Harvard, she acted in the University Players. The talented Sullivan made her Broadway debut in 1926. She was married to Henry Fonda from 1931 to 1933. Her film debut was in Only Yesterday, 1933. She was married to William Wyler from 1934 to 1936. Her best known of her 17 films include The Good Fairy, 1935, Three Comrades, 1938, The Shop-Worn Angel, 1938, and The Shop Around the Corner, 1940. Sullivan died on January 1, 1960 from a drug overdose that was ruled an accident. Her youngest daughter committed suicide less than a year later. One of her sons also took his life in 2008 at the age of 66. Frank Morgan played the shop owner Hugo Matischek. Morgan was born in 1890 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He was born into a wealthy family that traded in Angostura aromatic bitters. Some of his earlier jobs included selling toothbrushes, soliciting advertising, and bronco busting. Following his older brother, Morgan had his Broadway debut in 1914. He began making films in 1916 and continued until 1950. The best known of his 100 films include The Affairs of Cellini, 1934, for which he received an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, Naughty Marietta, 1935, The Good Fairy, 1935, The Great Ziegfeld, 1936, Trouble for Two, 1936, The Wizard of Oz, 1939, where he played Professor Marvel, The Wizard of Oz, The Gatekeeper, The Carriage Driver, and The Guard. The Shop Around the Corner, 1940. Tortilla Flats, 1942, where he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and The Human Comedy, 1943. Morgan died in 1949 at the age of 59. Joseph Schildkraut played the role of Ferenza Vadas. Joseph was born in 1896 in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in what is now Austria. His father was a very famous actor in Europe and was well known in Yiddish theater. Family moved to Germany when Joseph was 4, and by 6 he appeared regularly on stage with his father. Joseph graduated from the Berlin Royal Academy of Music in 1911. Following his graduation, the family moved to America and settled in New York in 1912. While his father became a big star in American Yiddish theater, Joseph attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Joseph's father was lured back to Europe by a larger paycheck, and the family returned to Germany. Joseph became quite successful in theater, working at the German People's Theater, or Deutsches Volkstheatern, from 1913 to 1920. Due to the economic ravages of war, work was hard to find following World War I. The family moved back to America in 1920. Having experience in German and Austrian films dating back to 1915, Joseph was immediately given an important role in an American film. He was cast in the D.W. Griffith-directed Orphans of the Storm, 1921, with the two Gish sisters. This film cemented his status as a sex symbol on the level of Navarro and Valentino. Other films during this period include The Song of Love, 1923, The Road to Yesterday, 1925, Shipwreck, 1926, Meet the Prince, 1926, Young April, 1926, The Heart Thief, 1927, The King of Kings, 1927, The Forbidden Woman, 1927, and Showboat, 1929. Continued working in the 30s with Viva Villa, 1934, Cleopatra, 1934, The Crusades, 1935, The Life of Emile Zola, 1937, where he won a Best Supporting Actor Oscar, Lancer Spy, 1937, Marie Antoinette, 1938, Suez, 1938, The Rain Came, 1939, The Three Musketeers, 1939, The Man in the Iron Mask, 1939, and The Shop Around the Corner, 1940. World War II stalled his film work, but he continued on stage. His career downfall occurred when he signed on to Republic Pictures. For the most part, he was underutilized and given poor roles. The exceptions were when he played the father in The Diary of Anne Frank, 1959, and a small role in The Greatest Story Ever Told, 1965. Joseph died in 1964 before his last film was released. Felix Bressart was cast as Pirovich. Felix was born in 1892 in eastern Prussia in what is now Russia. IMDb.com describes him as a lanky frame, big nose, toothbrush mustache, and horn-rimmed glasses. He looks like someone has decided to cross Groucho Marx with Albert Einstein, unquote. He trained under Marie Moses and Max Reinhardt in Germany and became a professional actor following World War I. He made his first film in 1928. By 1933, he was a well-established star. Then, those damn Nazis took over. Felix left Germany and he settled in the U.S. in 1938. There was a large population of German refugees in Hollywood at the time, and he quickly received work. His first major American film was Nino Tachka, 1939. This was followed by Comrade X, 1940, The Shop Around the Corner, 1940, Edison the Man, 1940, the Jack Benny comedy To Be or Not to Be, 1942, which was remade by Mel Brooks in 1983. Felix's last film was My Friend Irma, 1949. He died during the production at the age of 57. He was replaced in the film by Hans Conried. William Tracy played the role of Pepe Katana. He was born in Pennsylvania in 1917. He began acting as a youth before studying at the American Academy of Dramatic Art. At 19 in 1937, Tracy landed a role on Broadway in Brother Rat. The next year, he was cast in the same role for the film version Brother Rat in 1938. His next role was a big one, playing the younger version of Pat O'Brien's character in Angels with Dirty Faces, 1938. Producer Hal Roach cast Tracy in a series of very popular low-budget comedy based around the antics of Sergeant Dodo Doubleday. These movies include About Face, 1942, Hayfoot, 1942, Fall In, 1942, and Yankees Ahoy, 1943. He made other films such as Terry and the Pirates, 1940, The Shop Around the Corner, 1940, Tobacco Road, 1941, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 1941, and George Washington Slept Here, 1942. In 1942, Tracy joined the U.S. Army Air Corps and served in World War II. Film roles slowed following the war, and they even tried to revive Sergeant Dodo Doubleday for a war-weary audience with As You Were, 1951, and Mr. Walkie-Talkie, 1952. Tracy tried a Terry and the Pirates television series in 1952, but it fell flat. The poor man died relatively unknown in 1967 at the age of 49. Charles Halton played the detective. Halton was born in Washington, D.C. in 1876. He studied at the New York Academy of Dramatic Arts. His career ran from 1917 to 1958, and he had almost 200 credits. His best-known films include Dead End, 1937, Foreign Correspondent, 1940, Dr. Cyclops, 1940, One Foot in Heaven, 1941, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 1941, To Be or Not to Be, 1942, Wilson, 1944, The Best Years of Our Lives, 1946, It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, Three Godfathers, 1948, the one with John Wayne, Friendly Persuasion, 1956, and his final film, High School Confidential, 1958. Halton died in 1959. Charles Smith played the delivery boy Rudy. Smith was born in 1920 in Michigan. A funny-faced actor, he played character roles in dozens of movies that include The Shop Around the Corner, 1940, Henry and Dizzy, 1942, Henry Aldrich, Editor, 1942, Yankee Doodle Dandy, 1942, A Guy Named Joe, 1943, Henry Aldrich Swing It, 1943, and The Gnome Mobile, 1967. Smith died in 1988. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The employees of Matacek's Leather Goods in Budapest gather outside the unopened store to ensure that they were there ahead of the owner, Hugo Matacek, Frank Morgan. Some of the employees, such as long employee Alfred Kralik, James Stewart, and Pirovich Brassart, are good friends. Others, however, are viewed with suspicion and contempt, such as Francis Vadas, Joseph Schildkraut. My poor German would translate this last name into something like Cabbage Kid. However, it is a Yiddish variation of a German word and means tortoise. He brags about his conquest and flashes his money. Flora, Sarah Hayden, and Iona Inez Cortez are largely background characters. Pepe Katona, William Tracy, is the delivery boy that has plans to make it to the top. Pepe has been forced by Mrs. Matacek to run errands. Alfred has had dinner the night before with his boss and the boss's wife.
Tell me, Kralik, how was the dinner last night?
Oh, yes, that's right. Mr. Kralik had dinner with the boss last night. Well, how was it? Tell us all about it. Are you a partner now, Mr. Kralik?
Don't be funny. Bicarbonate, Mr. Kralik.
Bicarbonate, aren't you?
No, I had a little too much goose liver last night.
See? What's the matter? Wasn't it any good?
Now, look here, Vardash. Now, just a minute, folks. Come over. Did you hear what he said? I want you to hear this. Did I make any derogatory remark about the goose liver?
No,
I merely said that I had too much goose liver.
A little too much.
That's right, correct. A little too much goose liver. Not one word more and not one word less.
Matacek shows up by taxi and they all greet him. Both he and Alfred have upset stomachs from the previous night's dinner. They all go to work. Alfred confides in Pirovich that he has been writing a woman he found through the personal ads in the newspaper.
Oh, my dear friend.
What is all this?
Well, you know I can't afford a new encyclopedia. So I was looking through the ads in the Sunday paper, and I got on the wrong page, and I came across this ad.
Modern girl wishes to correspond on cultural subjects anonymously with intelligent, sympathetic young men.
Alfred and the woman have never met, and they have no idea who each other is. Matacek wants to buy a big lot of cigarette boxes. He asks Alfred how he feels about the boxes that play Ochichona. Alfred does not like it, but the others in the shop say they like it because they are afraid to tell the truth or just want to suck up to the boss. A young lady, Clara Novak, Margaret Sullivan, comes into the shop and wants to see Mr. Matacek. Alfred says he can handle her issue without bothering Mr. Matacek. Clara asks for a job and Alfred says they are not hiring. She begs for a job and Alfred says he knows Matacek's thoughts and reaction and is overheard by the boss. The boss butts in and takes over the conversation. When she asks for a job, he says no way and hurries away. Matacek calls for Alfred as he takes Clara's information. Matacek chews out Alfred for letting him get into the awkward situation. When Alfred is being chewed out, they hear the cigarette box playing and Vadas comes in saying he thinks he has a customer for the item. When the three go into the shop, Clara is holding the box. Matacek asks Clara about the box and she says she likes it. Clara then sells the box as a candy box to a lady and says the song is to remind people not to eat too many pieces of candy. Matacek hires her on the spot over Alfred's objections. Closer to Christmas, the boxes are shown in the window, selling below cost. Alfred tells Pirovich that he has a date for the evening. The pair also talk about how hard the boss has been to get along with lately. Alfred asks marriage advice from the devoted family man Pirovich. Alfred wants to ask for a raise and he plans to propose if the first meeting with the mystery woman goes well. They have been postponing their meetings, which is a sign of catfishing. Clara arrives to work and she and Alfred really don't like each other. Vadas arrives by taxi and flashes more money. Matacek arrives and tells the staff they have to work late redoing the windows when the shop closes. Clara tells Iona that she has an important date and needs to get off work. Mr. Matacek gets a call from his wife. She was out late the night before and now wants more money. After the call, Mr. Matacek is in a very foul mood. Alfred comes in to ask for the night off. Matichek dismisses him without finding out what he wants. Alfred is very unhappy. Pirovich talks him off the ledge. In the stockroom, Clara starts cozying up to Alfred. Her sole reason for being nice to Alfred is to secure the night off. Finally, she asks for the night off and Alfred sees the plot. It all ends badly. But it gets worse when she goes directly to Matichek and asks for the night off. Matichek asks Alfred his opinion and he asks for the night off too. Matichek lets him have the night off, but he is super mad. Alfred can't understand why his boss is mad at him.
I'm sorry, sir. If I'd only known yesterday.
Oh, I see. You want a special invitation. Well, next time I'll send you an engraved announcement.
Mr. Matuchek.
Yeah.
I have talked everything over with Mr. Kralik. I know his ideas, and I think Miss Novotny and I can manage the novelty window by ourselves.
Did I ask you for your advice? What do you mean, Mr. Kralik, and you talk things over? Whose shop is this?
Yes, Mr. Matuchek.
So, you want the evening off, Mr. Kralik. Well, that's all right. I think we can manage without you.
Mr. Matichek, this is the first time in years I've asked a favor. If it weren't so very important...
I've given you your evening. What more do you want? You want a brass band to see you off?
To pile on, Mrs. Matichek calls for more money. Because Peppy is out of the shop, the money is sent via Vodish. At closing time, Alfred and Clara are working in the window. Matichek is pacing around and finally calls Alfred into his office. Matichek fires him but gives him full pay and a good letter of recommendation. The rest of the staff thinks he is getting promoted and they can't understand why this has happened. Alfred throws away the flower he was to wear to the date. They are at the beginning of the Great Depression and jobs are hard to find. Matichek gets a call that someone is coming to meet him at the shop and he sends the entire crew home. Clara races to her locker and grabs the book and flower she is supposed to bring to the date for identification. Pirovich calls Alfred and leaves the message that he is coming over. He lobbies the boss for Alfred's job and almost loses his own. Vada sucks up to the boss. A private detective, Charles Halton, comes to the shop. He reports that, as Matichek suspected, his wife is having an affair with one of his employees. However, it's not Alfred as he suspected, it's Vodish.
Well, Mr. Matichek, your suspicion was right. It was one of your employees. Both our operatives identified him later as Mr. Vodish.
Vodish?
Matichek goes to his office to kill himself. Peppy comes in time to stop the suicide attempt.
Mr. Matichek! Don't do that, Mr. Matichek! Mr. Matichek!
Pirovich and Alfred go to the Cafe Niza, where he is to meet the mystery woman. Pirovich is to deliver a message breaking the date. Pirovich looks in the window and says she looks like Clara from the shop.
Can you see her?
Yes,
Is she pretty?
very pretty.
She is, huh?
I should say she has a little of the coloring of Clara.
Clara? What, Miss Novak of the shop, you?
No, Kralik, you must admit Clara's a very good-looking girl, and personally, I always found her a very likable girl.
Yeah, well, this is a fine time to talk about Miss Novak.
Well, if you don't like Miss Novak, I can tell you right now you won't like that girl.
Why?
Because it is Miss Novak.
Finally, he says the mystery woman is Clara. Alfred looks in with surprise. Alfred goes into the cafe and starts talking to Clara. She tries to brush him off so he doesn't interfere with her date. Alfred is having trouble reconciling the woman from work and the woman from the letters. Alfred sits at the next table with his back towards Clara. They continue to talk and spat. He calls her an old maid and she calls him an insignificant little clerk. This pretty much ends the encounter. Peppy takes Matichek to a hospital and he is suffering from a nervous breakdown. Alfred comes to the hospital and Matichek is contrite. He offers Alfred the job of shop manager. He tells Alfred to fire Vodish quietly. Later, Peppy worms his way into a job as a clerk. Everyone is happy to have Alfred back. Vodish starts sucking up. Peppy, wearing a new suit and bowler hat, gets busy hiring a new delivery boy.
Is this the Atlas Employment Agency? This is Mr. Katona of Matichek and Company speaking. We have an opening for a new errand boy. Now see here, I want an educated, healthy boy, good family, and no bad habits. Oh, send me 4 or 5. I'll look them over. And right away, if you please. Tell them to ask for Mr. Katona of the sales department. All right. What's the matter? Didn't you ever see a clerk in your life before?
Who made you a clerk?
Yes, who did this dreadful thing.
Peppy spills the story. When Mrs. Matichek calls, Peppy chews her out and asks if she wants to speak to Vodish. Alfred calls Vodish into the office and begins chewing him out. Alfred gets the call that Clara is sick and will not be at work. Finally, Alfred fires Vodish and the conversation carries out into the shop floor. Alfred shoves him into a pile of cigarette boxes. The others help throw him out.
I don't want you to agree with me. You're fired.
Oh, so I'm
You're
fired, huh?
fired. And get out of here, you two-faced, double-crossing two-timer. Now go on, get out of here.
I'm entitled to a letter of reference.
I forgot it. Flora, take a letter. To whom it may concern. Mr. Vodish has been in the employ of Matacek and Company for the last 2 years, during which time he has been very efficient as a stool pigeon, a troublemaker, and a rat.
Clara checks her post office box and it is empty. She goes into Matacek's office and is surprised to find Alfred as the manager. When she realizes it's true, she faints. That night, Alfred goes to see Clara, who is sick in bed. Clara receives a letter from her mystery man. Of course, it was written by Alfred. She reads the letter out loud and it explains that the mystery man could not make their date because he saw her with another man. 2 weeks pass and the shop has obtained record sales under Alfred's leadership. Peppy is lording over his new delivery boy, Rudy, Charles Smith. Matacek comes to the shop and passes out bonus checks to all his employees.
Do you think Eric would like that briefcase? Well, I don't know. I'm not so sure.
Oh, pardon me, ladies. I can't see very well without my glasses. Could you tell me the price on that briefcase?
$24.50.
$24.50. My, what values you get here, eh? I wonder how Matacek and Company can do it.
Well, if you don't know Mr. Matuchek, who should?
Clara tells Pirovich that she expects to be engaged after her first date with the mystery man. Matacek tries to get someone to go to dinner with him, but all the employees have plans except Rudy. Matacek invites the young man to dinner. That leaves Alfred and Clara alone in the shop. They talk about their planned dates, and Clara confesses that she has had a crush on Alfred for a time. Alfred tells Clara that he has met her mystery man, and he is not too bad in spite of being fat, bald, and unemployed.
Would you call him fat?
Well, I wouldn't, but of course that's just a matter of opinion. Now, personally, I think that little stomach of his gives him a nice homey quality. Now, if I were a girl and had to choose between a young good-for-nothing with plenty of hair and a good, solid, mature citizen, I'd pick Matthias Popkin every time.
Didn't he impress you as being rather witty?
Well, he struck me as rather depressed. Well, of course, it's unfair to judge a man when he's out of a job.
Out of a job? He never told me.
No, he feels that both of you can live very nicely on your salary.
Did you tell him how much I make?
Well, he's your fiancé, and he asked me. When I told him what salary you made, he a little worried. But then I promised him that you were going to get a raise, and he felt much better about it. And let me tell you, mentioning that bonus didn't do you any harm at all.
Alfred puts a carnation in his lapel, the dating signal. He tells her the P.O. box number, and Clara realizes he is the mystery man. They kiss. Notes. Well, I guess that story sounded pretty familiar. Based on the 1937 play Parfumerie, this movie has been remade as a musical called In the Good Old Summertime 1949 with Judy Garland and Van Johnson. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan played the Alfred and Clara roles in the remake called You've Got Mail 1998. This time the relationship was based on one of the first widely used email programs, AOL. The dislike was based on Hank's ownership of a big box bookstore, something that no longer exists, and her ownership of a small independent bookstore. As a tribute to today's movie, Ryan's character's bookstore was called The Shop Around the Corner. World famous short summary, watch out for catfishing. Hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on the site at classicmovierev.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All that I ask is that you jump over to Apple Podcasts and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. If you want to get involved with the show, contact me through email on the website. Beware the Moors.